You've had a great physical day, wonderful sunshine, and now we get to top it off with nourishing your mind tonight. And coming in, I had the opportunity to meet so many of you from such a range. We've got automobile designers, we've got realtors, financial services salespeople, mortgage brokers, Ford Financial is here. Got a tremendous array. And the best news I can tell you is that regardless of your business, every single principle we touch on today is going to have direct application in your daily professional life and in your personal life. And this is not some academic, theoretical new idea that some professor cooked up. In fact, throughout the evening, I think there are going to be many occasions when you say, I've noticed that, or I know that, or I've done that, or I used to do that, and I'm going to start doing it again. So let's go right ahead and get started. Okay, I could have started that way. Or maybe I could have said the same thing a different way. Good evening. What a beautiful day it was today. What a darn shame we have to all be inside for a seminar tonight. I know you'd really rather be out in the sunshine. I met a variety of people coming in, and we got so many different interests here, from automobile designers to realtors to financial services salespeople. We've even got Ford Financial. Look, to tell you the truth, there's just no way I'm going to be able to personalize this for each individual business here. And I'm afraid I must tell you that what I'm going to be sharing with you, it's really nothing new. I think you know everything I'm going to be talking about anyway. So why don't we just go ahead and get started? Okay, could have said the same thing either way. Who here, had I opened with the second version, might at this point be trying to slide toward the exit door? So did you have a negative impression the second time around? Tell me your name, please.
Amanda.
Amanda, what did you notice that gave you a negative feeling the second time around?
Just the attitude.
And although I said nothing about my attitude, isn't it true that you size up a person's attitude based on the way they sound? In fact, from an individual's tone of voice, you infer. I didn't say this is going to be a really boring night, and I don't want to be here either. But you may have picked that up from the way I sounded. Amanda, that's excellent. It's a correct answer, and it's a prize-winning answer. I have a copy of What You Say Is What You Get. You're right. And there's more than one right answer, because you size people up based not just on how they sound. What else shaped your opinion about the second version? See, you offer a prize, the hands go. Yes.
Facial expressions.
So interesting. You were evaluating my facial expressions, no doubt my posture as well. And in fact, don't we do it every time you meet a customer for the first time? And when they meet you for the first time? When you meet somebody new in the neighborhood? For those of us who are single, if you're out meeting somebody socially, you form impressions right away. It comes from the way you sound. It also comes non-verbally. It comes from facial expression, posture. Also, I want to tell you, as I came in here, I did not have in my head, okay, don't forget, slump down and change your facial expression. I didn't have to do that because I made sure that the words I used were negative. And when you use negative words, that shapes the way you think and the way you act. Because, of course, your body posture and the way you think are all tied in to the way you speak as well. So good. Who said that? Great. I have an audio version of tonight's program for you. Yeah? Anybody notice anything I said that made you feel one way or the other in the two versions? Yes, what'd you notice?
Just that you mentioned that everyone would be able to get something out of it as opposed to the personalization that you may not be able to do.
In fact, you might notice that I said 3 facts. I said the same 3 facts. It's been a lovely day and we're inside tonight. I said there's a wide variety of interests here in the audience. And I said that this is not new information. It's not the facts. I said the same 3 facts. It's the way you state the facts that shape the impression. Yes, that was a prize-winning answer. And this red cord is just going to look great on your phone. I'll explain why later. Hey, what you did with me is exactly what your customers do with you, what your colleagues do with you, what friends do with you, and of course what you do with them. You pay attention to those same 3 factors that you did with me. Before anybody opens his or her mouth, you're paying attention to the nonverbal messages. How's this person come across? What's their posture like? What's the facial expression? But it doesn't stop there, because then they open their mouths, and then you listen for how they speak. And you infer what their attitude is based on the way you interpret their tone of voice. And you definitely do also pay attention to the specific words they say. And they may be positive, they may be negative. Again, it's not the fact, it's the words used to convey the fact. You just did it with me. Obviously, it's an artificial situation. Your speaker comes in, you think, okay, it's a beautiful evening. I'm going to be with this person. Is this going to be a valuable experience or not? But it happens every time you meet anybody. We all size each other up. It's human nature. So here's my question. If those are the three factors that people use in evaluating you, which would be most important? How many people here believe in the power of positive thinking? Oh, unanimous, unanimous. So you know that whether you're a realtor or selling financial services or aiming to increase collections from people who are behind on their car payments, whatever it is, you know that the path to success is that after this program, you go to your office tomorrow, and you go like, I'm thinking so positive. Of course it would be absurd to sit in the corner and think positively. That's not what brings about change. It's a crucial component, but thinking positively ain't going to do it. How about this? Who would say actions speak louder than words? Every hand up. And yet, don't you see people who have perfect posture, they have a stride of authority, when they shake hands, the firmness is perfect, the eye contact is ideal, everything's just right, and you're thinking, what a dork. This is a hollow shell. This is just someone going through the motions. There's no true substance inside. I'm not here to say that thinking is the most important thing or that acting is the most important thing. And I'm also not here to say that the words you speak are the most important thing, because the reality is they all influence each other. What you think about influences how you act, influences how you speak influences how you think and how you act. They're all connected. So who does this really matter for? We're here, of course, representing our own interests, yet we have a team at work. We have a team that we are a part of. We certainly have customers. What about them? Where's the most important component there when it comes to communicating? Well, once again, they influence each other. If you have customers who speak negatively to a colleague, and the colleague's in the back room saying, oh, these customers are a pain in the butt, and then that rubs off on you, no doubt it affects your attitude, which rubs off on the next customer. In fact, they're all connected. What's going on in your mind, what's going on in your mouth, what's going on in your body, all are connected. Now, I know what happens when you come to a program like this. Many of you come to many of these programs, and you have either people who you work with or people you've met previously, and you come and you sit down with them. And if there's nobody in the room who you recognize, nobody you feel comfortable with, then you look for someone who seems friendly and approachable, and that's who you're sitting with now. I'd like you to stand up, please. And will you quickly pivot around, find somebody close by who you've never seen before, a complete stranger. I'd like you to form teams of 2 people, please. Teams of 2. Find a stranger. Okay, we're going to do teams of 2, so just find one partner. And what I'd like you to do now, please, decide between the 2 of you who has the most hair. Okay? The one with the most hair. Listen carefully. Those of you with more hair, you get a speaking role in just a moment. Those of you with less hair, here's the job I have for you. When your partner starts talking to you in a minute, pay total attention to what your partner says. Don't interrupt, don't let your mind wander, don't contribute your thoughts, don't agree. Just remain silent, but totally stick with your partner. Listen to everything she or he says. That's for those of you with less hair. Those of you with more hair, when I say go, what I'd like you to do is tell your partner everything you can think of to say about your personal, all-time, absolute favorite dessert item. I want you to tell your partner, please, what's your favorite dessert? Why do you like it so much? What are the key ingredients? What did your grandmother used to put in it? Where was the best one you ever had? What's the texture, the flavor, the smell? Tell them everything about your favorite dessert. Those of you with less hair, silently listen. Okay, ready? Hairy people, go! Stop! Silence! Say nothing else! Silence! Silence, please! Those of you who were on the listening side, what I want you to do now, please, is look at this list of adjectives up on the screen, and I'll ask you to step to the side just a minute here so everybody can see. From that list of adjectives, will you please select the 4 adjectives that describe the personality of the individual you just listened to? Jot them down anywhere. Back of your notes, it doesn't any scrap of paper. Just very quickly go with your first gut impressions. 4 adjectives that describe your partner's personality. Go ahead. Okay, hey, if you're not done yet, you're doing it wrong. This is not psychoanalysis, just your first quick instinct. No 7-year deal here. Okay, now, will you take your seat, please, or kneel down, stay close to your partner, because what I want you to do now is tell your partner exactly why you picked each of those words. I want you to tell them not just what the words were, but what caused you to say those words? Hold it, we better do this by example. Let me do this by example. Let's see, what is your name, please?
Mark.
Mark, you're our first volunteer. Please stand up. And your partner is who?
Sue.
Sue. Did you know Sue before?
No.
Okay, great. Now, may we assume that you were the listener here, Mark? Okay, sorry, I just want to be sure. So you face your partner and you say, Sue, I didn't know you previously, but now that I've had some insights about your personality, here's how I'd size you up. I'd say, okay, we'll use a hypothetical example here. No, you wrote down good things about Sue, you put down friendly. What made you choose friendly? Why, of all those words, did you pick that one?
She had a nice smile. She looked outgoing.
So, as you did with me, you took into account the nonverbal. I see that you also have confident. What made you think she was confident?
Because she knew exactly what she liked.
So partly it's timing. You come right out with it. There are many factors that go into your assessing what someone is like, and this is exactly what I'd like you to do right now, is tell your partner, for each of the 4 words you chose, what made you pick it? Was it word choice? Was it enunciation? Was it their pace of speaking? Was it their volume, the strength of their... What is it that made you think they were like that? Go ahead now, please. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, good. Come on back. By the way, this would be a great time to thank your partner, because I've only listed positive adjectives. I learned from prior experience. It got out of hand. Okay, let me find out. For the half of you who had the assignment of analyzing your partner, how many of you were successful at selecting 4 words from the list that described their personality? Okay, I see half the hands. Half of you had the assignment, half of you were able to do it. Now, I rushed you. If instead of rushing you, I had said, let's take a few minutes now and have you write an essay about your partner. Who here could have, those 4 words, don't feel limited to this list. Just go ahead and write what you feel about the other person. Who could have written more than 4 words? Who could have written 4 sentences to describe your Who could have written 4 paragraphs to describe... 4 chapters? Hey, how long did you have to get to know this person? How much? Couple minutes? 30 seconds? No. When I said stop, that was 13 seconds. In other words, and look, were we not videotaping with the need for lights? I could have brought this house completely black. You would have done exactly the same thing, as if you were on a phone call. If you don't have any visual stimulation at all, if you don't see what they're wearing or what their posture is, you still size them up. Because in less than a quarter of a minute, 3 things happened. First, you either projected or you perceived a very clear impression of the other individual. You listened to the words they picked, how they enunciated them, the order in which they said them. You analyzed them in very rapid succession. 2, you didn't do this by ESP. You weren't going, let's see, I'm getting vibes that you're friendly. No, it wasn't ESP. You had specific things you paid attention to. It was their word choice, the tone of voice, their pace of speaking. 3, 1, you project it quickly. 2, you do it because of specific identifiable variables. 3, you controlled it. You controlled it. If I had negative words up there, and you didn't like the way you were being analyzed by others, and you said, well, I don't want people thinking of me like that. Why are they doing that? Because you're putting that out. If you hired me to work in your company and you said, you know, George, we really want people to arrive here and feel great about doing business with us, so you're going to be working in the reception area. We want you to put people in a positive mood and let them know we're a really professional organization. And we come to a 60-day review, and you've noticed that customers don't seem to be very positive. You say, George, what's the deal? Your job is to make them feel positive, and it's not happening. What's going on? I don't know. I greet them all when they come in. Well, what do you do? Well, of course, first I shake hands. And you'd say, you don't shake hands like that. I'd say, well, this is just the way I always have. You say, and you don't have that wimpy, whiny voice, George. Well, what do you mean this is just the way I sound? And you don't slump down that way, do you? Well, what do you mean this is just me? I think you'd probably say, you could do very well at our competitor. You'd say, for goodness sakes, get a grip. You're responsible. What do you mean this is always the way you've stood? Change it. Take control. Ladies and gentlemen, here's what we're here to do this evening. The image that you project to others comes very largely from the way you speak to them. It is totally within your control. Our aim tonight is to make sure that the image you project to others, both professionally and personally, is just the way you want it to be, that you get high levels of cooperation from others, and that you use the language that comes out of your mouth every day to be a positive influence on yourself. Now, I'd like you to open your note-taking guide, and right at the top of the inside cover, our foundation for the program this evening is simply this. Every phrase you use, everything you say, everything you write in an email has an impact on others. Everything you say to a potential customer shapes their impression of you and the company you represent. Everything you say to somebody in a social setting influences how they will view you. Every phrase you use first shapes your image. Just as you did with me when I walked on to begin the program tonight. You're saying, what's the guy look like? How's he move? What's he sound like? We do it with each other constantly. You know, I'll always remember sitting in a job interview at a major cellular telephone company based in Seattle. And for this particular interview, the company was in the boardroom and had the 2 finalist candidates for their top customer service position. These 2 individuals, neither came from a cellular phone background, and both, they decided to give the level playing field. Both had the identical questions to answer, and the questions had been sent by courier to arrive at the same time. So one wouldn't have an advantage, because one was a hometown guy, one lived in Phoenix. So they both got these questions, and the day that I was there was the final interview day, and the first candidate came in happened to be the guy from Seattle. He came into the room. He had good posture. He looked good. He was well-dressed. He shook hands all around, had good eye contact, everything very positive. And he began by saying, well, first of all, thank you very much. You sent me these questions in advance. Unfortunately, I just got them 2 days ago, so I've looked them over, but I haven't had a chance to really study them thoroughly. I'll do my best for you, though. Also, I want to let you know, I know this is a technical field, and I do not have any technical background. I have been working in financial services in the customer service arena, but I'm a very quick study, and I'm sure I can catch on quickly. And then he proceeded to give very good answers to the questions. The questions were things like, you have a customer service rep who has been chronically late and coming in for the third time in a row late, and you bring this individual into your room. What do you say? He did great. Second candidate came in. Her name was Glenna. She's the one from Phoenix. She came in, looked good, shook hands, good eye contact, excellent level playing field. She began by saying, first of all, thank you very much for sending me these questions. I got them 2 days ago, and that's given me ample opportunity to really focus on what I'd like to get across to you. Also, I want to acknowledge something you're doing that's very unusual in this field, because in the cellular business and in the computer hardware business, it's very high-tech, and typically the same companies hire people from their competitors, and the same ideas end up getting circulated from company to company. Obviously, you want to bring in fresh, new, outside ideas, and I'm so glad to be included because I do not have that technical background. I've been working with Federal Express for the last several years, and I've learned a thing or two about customer service I'll be eager to bring into this industry. And she answered the questions as well as he did. Who got the job? Not because of the facts. The facts were the same. She got it 2 days in advance, and she wasn't from a technical background. From the way she positioned those facts. Your image, whether it's in a job interview or in a selling scenario or in a social meeting, is shaped by the words you choose. And everything you say also determines how much cooperation you're going to get from other people. Let me find, who's somebody up here in front here who's at their first production here, first time you've been at one of these meetings? You are?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Would you stand up, please? What is your name?
John.
John, how many of you know John? Oh, John. John, almost nobody knows you here. What's your name?
My name is John
Full name?
Van Camp.
John Van Camp. Where do you work?
I'm unemployed.
Unemployed, great. Okay, and what is your direction? Where are you heading? Professionally.
Professionally is to do the best I can with the previous experience that I've got wherever I go.
I'd like you to meet John Van Camp. He's in between jobs right now, looking to take advantage of his professional background. As you can see, he's a good-looking guy, takes care of himself, has a nice informality about him, but John has a mustache. Oh, hold it. Let's try that again. I'd like you to meet John Van Camp. He's between jobs right now. He's going to take advantage of his professional background. As you can see, he's a good-looking guy, takes care of himself, he has a casual way, and he has a mustache. Any difference? One word, 3 letters can make all the difference. If your supervisor brings you in for a performance review and says, well, this is your 1-year anniversary and you've had a very good year, but, think, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Thank you, John. Excellent mustache, too. Very good. One little word can determine if I want to have cooperation with John, he's going to be against me if I've said but when I might have said and. Because the words you choose guide the levels of cooperation you get from other people. They decide whether they want to buy from you, work well with you, contribute to the team you're on together, based on the way they interpret your attitude about working together. And I want to know who hears what you say. It sure goes out of your mouth into the other person's ear. It might go through a phone wire and get into their ear. But it goes on to your own ear. In fact, your most important listener, your biggest critical component in listening to the way you communicate is yourself. Because every phrase you use programs your own brain. What you hear yourself say in typical interactions with other people shapes what you think about yourself. So, ladies and gentlemen, the importance of the language you and I use every day is absolutely crucial. And it could be as small a thing as replacing but with and. You know, I'll always remember GE. How many people here own a GE product? I think your hand should be up. We all have GE. In fact, if you own a GE product, you'll always find there's an 800 number on it that goes to the GE Answer Center in Louisville, Kentucky. First time GE had me come in to do some work for them, before I gave a presentation, I went out in the call center and I sat with typical individuals to see, what are their calls like? And I sat beside a woman named Miss Cooley. And I listened in on Miss Cooley's calls, and I'll tell you, no matter what you may think of your work, Miss Cooley's work was really not very exciting. All day long, call after call was, how do I change the light bulb in my refrigerator? It opens on the right side, but I want it to open on the left side. My kids have been making water balloons, and now they're jammed into the automatic ice maker. How can I get them out? The whole time I listened to her, there was only one really interesting call. This was from the person who phoned and said, how do I get the fireworks to stop in my microwave? There shouldn't be fireworks. How long have you noticed the fireworks in your microwave? This caller actually said, it's been 2 weeks now, ever since my birthday, because my friends gave me this beautiful set of top quality pewter serving plates. And that metal is so cold because they're thick. They're top quality. But I preheat them because I don't want to put my warm food on these cold plates, so I put them in the microwave to preheat them, and sparks start flying. It's like, you idiot! But no, Miss Cooley didn't say anything like that. In fact, Miss Cooley was consistently extremely positive, and I paid very careful attention to her word choice. Here's what I noticed. You want to know where your nearest dealer is? Miss Cooley would never say, well, you'll have to get your zip code, and let me then check it, and I'll have to cross-index it with your zip code. She would say, I'll be happy to cross-index that with your zip code. You'd say, what's the part number for that soap dispenser cup on the dishwasher? Miss Cooley would never say, well, just a minute, I'll have to check the parts manual. She would say, just a moment, I'll be glad to check the parts manual. Miss Cooley would never say, that's a technical question. What I'm going to have to do is get our engineers working on this, and then I'll have to call you back. She would say, that's a technical question. What I'd like to do is get our engineers working on that, and I'll be glad to call you back. Here's my question for you. If you called Miss Cooley, would it make a difference in your experience of that individual and of GE if she said, you'll have to get that, you'll have to look that up, I'll have to get engineering, I'll have to call you back, versus, I'll be happy to look that up, I'll be glad to talk to engineering, I'd be happy to call you back? Would that make a difference? Yes. In fact, Miss Cooley's personal decision to rid herself of that common phrase, I'll have to, made all the difference. And what about to Miss Cooley? Now, I timed her, I watched, and she handled, in the average hour, 12 calls. In each of those calls, she handled, on average, 3 requests for information. 3 questions to which she could have answered, I'll have to or I'll be glad to. And she worked an 8-hour shift, 8 times, 12 times, 288 times a day. What does it do to Miss Cooley if 288 times she hears herself say, I'll have to get the part number, I'm going to have to check your zip code, I'll have to get the engineers working on this, I'll have to call you back. I don't want to call you back, I don't like customers. What a drag, I hate my job, my life is miserable. Or she could give herself a little boost each time and say, I'll be glad to check on that, I'd like to get our engineers working on it, I'll be happy to call you back. She could use her language not just to shape others' perception of her, but her own feelings about herself and her work. Here's the way we're going to do things this evening. In that auditorium next door is a bunch of losers. We're an auditorium full of winners. Now, if you had a bunch of microphones descend from the ceiling in this auditorium and in that auditorium, and you compared the way people here speak and the way people there speak, you'd notice some striking differences. In fact, I've made it my professional mission to identify and catalog the differences between the word choices of winners and losers. And they are marked. They're very dramatically different. And they fall into 9 categories, 9 trait areas. Tonight, I'm going to explain each of those 9 traits to you with some illustrative examples. And the first is that power talkers, we're going to say people who use language positively, people who are winners. And I'm not talking about rich people, unless you consider having successful careers, good friends, enjoyment of life, healthy families, and probably financial well-being. That whole thing is what creates wealth in our lives. Wealthy people and poor people, winners and losers, talk differently. The first trait of winners, the first language trait, is that they project positive expectations. They let you know that working with them is going to be a positive experience. They don't say what typical people would say, those in the other auditorium. They'd say, Jim, I'm going to have to ask someone in customer service. They'll have to check with the plant. They'll have to call you back. They would instead make a conscious effort never to say, I'll have to, knowing that it's going to create a negative impression and make them feel bad and get lower levels of cooperation. They'd instead say what they'd be glad to do, what they'll be happy to do, what they'd like to do. They make a decision to purge from their daily vocabularies that phrase, I'll have to. And there's so many other ways that project positive expectations. Let's suppose that after the program, you decide you go out for a late snack. You arrive at a restaurant, the greeter is there at the podium, the individual says, I'm afraid I can't seat you until 10. Or that individual could say, I'll be happy to seat you at 10. The fact is the same. You're going to get seated at 10. You can either look forward to it as a positive experience or have it be a negative experience. What are you doing here tonight? Spending the night in this room? No. I don't think so. Spending is a depletion word. Spending says, I've got a certain amount of goodies and I'm going to let them drift away. People who are positive in their approaches to life replace spend with invest and enjoy. Absolutely, I want to enjoy our evening together here today, and I want it to be an investment. I want the time that you invest in here, the energy you put into this program, to give you a tremendous reward, a payback, because you'll be able to use it not just tomorrow at work, you'll be able to use it tonight with your family, you'll be able to use it in your friendships as well as your professional relationships. Power talkers are people who project positive expectations. They say what they can do, not what they can't. They talk about how they want to enjoy and invest their time, not spend their time. They talk about what they'll be glad to do, not what they'll have to do. Now, as I said at the outset, this is not just about your professional life. It doesn't just apply to what you say at work. In fact, how many people here are parents? Anybody have middle school age kids or elementary school? Okay. I'm a very proud dad of a 13-year-old girl who I'm raising on my own. And I remember when Kelsey was 6, taking her to a museum in Seattle, and as we pulled up outside the museum to park, she looks down, there's an ivy planting strip beside the curb there, and she looks down and she goes, Dad, look! And she was all elated. Can't see? Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry, here. It was kind of like this. Dad, I got lucky! And my first reaction instantly, I do hear the phone ringing, and I want to take issue with something Michael said earlier. He said they're absolutely prohibited in this room. That is not the case. However, when your phone rings, would you hold it up before answering so I can get over with the microphone? Because we would all like to jointly critique the conversation. We'll offer some helpful suggestions. When you say, I'll have to call you back, we're going to say, no, Josie, I'll be glad to call you back. So it's fine to leave your phones on, but please just let me get to you with the microphone before you have the conversation. Kelsey, when she found that dollar bill, my first reaction was to reinforce it, as those of us who are parents do, what a lucky kid you are. And then I thought, hold it, wait. What is the behavior I want to train in my daughter? My most important job in my life is raising this girl. I don't want her to get the idea that maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get a good grade on something. Maybe I'll get a job someday. Maybe I'll enjoy my life if I'm lucky. No, I want her to know that she's responsible for creating good outcomes in her life. So fortunately, I caught myself and said, Kelsey, what an observant little girl you are. A lot of people walked right past that dollar bill. They didn't spot it because they weren't paying attention. You did, though, so you got the reward. And you do very well in your spelling tests, too. It's the same thing. You pay attention. You look carefully at the letter combinations. That's why you do so well. When you get into Harvard, I know that Power talkers are people who do not attribute successful outcomes in their life to luck. Power talkers give credit where due. Powerless people, those over there, when something goes right, say, well, for once I got lucky. Successful people, when things go well, they say, hold it now, what did I do well that created this positive outcome? Was it my planning? Was it my analysis of the situation? Was it my years of experience? Was it my professional background? What is it that allowed me to capitalize on this experience? And caution, I'm not talking about egotistical, I'm fabulous, that's why I sold the car. No. It's appropriately identifying the role that you took in creating the positive outcomes. And note that people who are successful winners in life are quick to share the credit. They don't just talk about what they did right, they talk about how others contributed and created positive outcomes. How many people here are not in the sales profession? Okay, so I see about 26% of us are dead wrong. Everybody here is in the sales profession. Whether you're in a job interview or meeting somebody for the first time or selling a product or service, we're all selling. Now you know the 3/4 of you who recognize that you're in sales. You go to program after program, and don't you always hear about the value of generating referrals from your current customer base as the very best way to bring in new business? And we all hear it, and not many of us do it. Some do. Some have great success at generating referrals from their existing customers. And I want to show you what they do to create that success. You can duplicate it. When I lived in California, my vehicles were insured by a company then called 20th Century, now 21st Century Insurance. And 20th Century Insurance was one of those specialized insurance companies that would only take you as a policyholder if you never file a claim, you have a low-risk vehicle, perfect driving record. If you got a Porsche and a couple of speeding tickets, forget it. They're not going to insure you. They, in short, only insure people who they have a very high level of confidence will not file claims. And as a result, their rates are about 1/3 lower than everybody else in California. Now I noticed that every year I'd get a call from 20th Century, and it would go something like this. Mr. Walther, congratulations. Year anniversary on your policy, and once again you've had a year of perfect driving. There are so few Californians who take their responsibility as seriously as you do. You're exactly the reason we're able to offer these low rates. And we want to be sure that we can continue offering them at this low level, or lower them for that matter. And that's why we want to be sure we don't just insure anybody. So congratulations on having an excellent, excellent driving record. Among your friends, we'd love to offer these rates, but only to people who are also outstanding drivers, who are the first people for that matter. And that's why we want to be sure we don't just insure anybody. So congratulations. Couple of names that come to mind for you of individuals who drive low-risk vehicles, who take their responsibilities seriously, who would never drink and drive, for example. We'd love to give them the same level of service and the same low rates we offer to you. I said, Pete Schweitzer. Well, do you suppose Pete Schweitzer then called me up and said, the nerve! George, you gave my name and number to that insurance company and they called up and lowered my rates by 30%? How dare you? Of course not. He was thrilled. I was delighted to be their customer. I was happy to spread the savings to my friend. It created a positive outcome for him and also for the insurance company. But let's take that call apart. They didn't say, well, we're on a referral campaign and we've gotten up to the W's. No, they started off by giving credit where due. That is, they identified the first step to gathering referrals is to give credit where due. They identified what was it that made me a good customer. Okay, do any of you have customers you wish you didn't have? Okay, don't ask them for referrals. Their friends will all be just like them. You don't want them. But let's suppose you decided for once and for all that you really would go capture referrals. Let's say you just decided to identify your top 10% of your customers. Maybe it's the people who always pay on time, who are a pleasure to deal with, who trust your advice and judgment, who make good decisions, the people who value your relationship. If you identified the profile of what makes for your top tier of your very best customers, wouldn't it make sense to call them and say, you are among my very best customers. What I notice and appreciate about you is that You're always punctual with your payments. You're a pleasure to deal with. You're always friendly. You return my calls. You give me ideas that help us grow. You're exactly the kind of customer we would love to have more of. Start by offering credit where due. Second step, as with 20th century, be specific about who you're after in terms of referrals. Not, gee, can you think of anybody who would be a possible customer for us? No, what they did with me is say, among your friends, who are the first couple of people who come to mind when you think of very safe drivers who would never drink and drive, who take their responsibilities seriously? In other words, it's kind of a fill-in-the-blanks approach. You tell your current customers what you love about them and what you wish you had more of in others, and let them fill in the blanks. And the third step, and this is an important one, is to make sure that as you ask for these referrals, you provide some appreciation or incentive for doing so. In my case, they explained that my rates would stay low if they could make certain that they insured other policyholders like me who were low risk, who were probably never going to file a claim. Point out why it is in your customers' best interest to have them supply you with referrals so you can continue to grow your business with customers like them. Power talkers are people who give credit where due. I'd like you to write 3 R's in this section of your notes, please. 3 R's, because my company name is Speaking from Experience. I view my role with you here today is that I go through my life paying attention to the experiences that happen to me, looking for lessons I can learn from them, looking for how can I write a story about this, how can I explain it to an audience, how can I, as a typical customer, how can I say what affects me positively, what can I pass along to others. And so I'm paying attention. I use what I call the 3R system. First R. I recognize what impresses me positively as a customer. For example, I was speaking to a dental group in San Diego not long ago, and I had a suit pressed just before the presentation. I went to pick it up, and the individual, you go to the dry cleaner, there's that automatic conveyor belt thing that brings your clothes around, and then they punch in the number, and it comes around to your suit or your dress, your garment, and they take it off the hook, and then usually right by the cash register there's a little bar, kind of like a closet bar, and they hook it on there, and they ring you up, and then you take your clothes. This guy in San Diego, though, I noticed that as he took the clothes off the rack, when he went to that hanger bar, he turned it around and hooked it from the back. And I thought, wait a minute, he's doing that to make it easier for me to lift him and go. And I noticed what he was doing, I recognized it, and 2R, I rewarded it, because I said, hey, I see what you just did. Of all the times I've been to a dry cleaner, I've never before had somebody do that. You took the extra trouble to turn that hanger around and hook it so that it would be easier for me. Wow, thank you. That guy almost started crying. I'm not kidding. He said, and he happened to be of Arabic descent, and he had a heavy accent, and he said, I do this for all my customers. Nobody ever noticed. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you. It was like we were going to hug each other that he had turned the hangers around. Recognize excellence in others. 2, reward it on the spot. 3, report on it. What I'm doing with you. I went to my audience and I reported it, and it happened to be a dental audience, and some individual said, hey, when we have new patients come in, we have a new patient form. What if I put the new patient form on a clipboard with a pen and turned it around and handed it to them with the pen? Would that make them feel better? Absolutely! What a tiny adaptation. You could say, well, the dry cleaner does that. Why couldn't I do something similar to make my patients or my customers feel that much more welcome? Recognize excellence in others. Reward it in them, and report it to those around you, and see how you can incorporate it into your own business. Power talkers are people who give credit where due. When they notice things going right, they notice it, and they decide to do something about it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to find out, are any people here people who have private pilot's licenses? Anybody ever take flying lessons? Okay, good. Quite a few of you. I'm also a pilot. And I want to tell you about a flight experience I had on June 16, 1996. I kept a Cessna 182 at a small airport in Seattle, and it happened that this is the airport where Boeing builds all 737s and 757s. It's the Renton Airfield. And I kept my airplane there, and on that particular day, I went flying with two people I had not met before, because I had made a donation to a charity auction, the Starlight Foundation, AIDS critically ill kids. And you know, the auctioneer says, and your pilot will take you and a guest sightseeing in the San Juan Islands, which is in the far northwest part of our country. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful part. It's near Seattle. It's very close to Victoria, British Columbia. Just a cluster of lovely islands. And so that particular day, I went to the airport, I walked across the tarmac, and walking toward me was a guy, mid-50s, gray mustache, gray hair, a real twinkle in his eye. He was obviously excited about going flying. His name was Pete Buck, and I welcomed Pete aboard. Pete was an attorney in Seattle, and he had been the winning bidder. In fact, a very persistent bidder, because no matter what anybody else bid, Pete always outbid them. He wanted that flight. With him was his fiancée, Jean. Jean was a dentist. And Jean looked about the way you look if you're walking into her office for a root canal. You could see she did not like this whole idea of going in a small plane. So I welcomed them. I got them seated in their side of the plane. I came around, walked around the prop, and got into. Pilot's always sitting here, and I thought, well, Jean looks a little nervous, so I'll lighten things up. Now, as a pilot, you always give a safety briefing to your passengers, whether you're commercial or private. And I said, now, Jean, if at any point I should slump forward and stop breathing, don't worry, Pete can just press this red button and say, "Help, the pilot's dead!" And someone will talk you down. Pete will land the plane. It'll be okay. Now, and Pete, should we land prematurely, you'll want to raise this lever so you can pop that door open and get out of the plane. And it was a perfectly beautiful day. We took off from Renton, and Jean thought that we were going to go sightseeing. But Pete had a secret plan, because June 16th was the day they had met 1 year earlier, and they had met on this little island, San Juan Island, and specifically at a yacht harbor called the Roche Harbor Resort that had a little airstrip beside it. So he thought his surprise was, for their anniversary, he'd have me fly to the place, as he put it in legal parlance, the scene of the crime, where they had met. I thought this was a wonderful plan. So we took off, perfect flying conditions, reached cruising altitude. I flicked on the automatic pilot. We're flying along, and it was spectacular. Jean, if you look over your right shoulder there, that's Mount Rainier behind you, over 14,000 feet. Pete, look, up ahead there, that's Mount Baker. These two mountains have more glaciers on them than any other mountainous area in North America outside of Alaska. It was fantastic, sparkling, beautiful weather. As we approached Roche Harbor, I went through my pre-landing checklist, fuel mixture 10%, flaps 10, checked everything, all's well, flicked off my autopilot. And I heard a voice. Don't land there. Who's that? What's that? And I looked, Pete and Jean didn't seem to have heard this voice. And I thought, well, that's kind of creepy. And I checked my gauges, everything was just fine. I felt fine. But I'm not the kind of guy who, my life is not ruled by voices. And so I did what you pilots know. I made my turn to left base and then my turn to final, the last thing before landing. And as I made my turn to final, I heard again, don't land there. I thought, God, I've never had that happen before. That's weird. I thought, well, maybe I should change and go to another airstrip. How would I explain that? Pete, don't worry, I feel fine. As you can see, the instruments are all in the green, the weather's perfect, everything's okay. I want to let you know, I'm hearing voices. You don't like your pilot from the cockpit today. Ladies and gentlemen, we're approaching Detroit Airport. I'm hearing voices in the cockpit. I think we'll go to Minneapolis. So I decided to continue with the landing. And we were on short final, which is just before you actually touch down, before the threshold of the runway. In fact, the beginning of the runway was about as far as from here to the back of the auditorium. And at that moment, we encountered a phenomenon that the pilots in the room know about, and which you encounter yourself without knowing about it, and that's called wind shear. Wind shear is a vertical wind. You can't see it, you can't do anything about it. And in fact, you encounter wind shear all the time as you're flying, because you're going along at 33,000 feet, and suddenly your coffee jiggles a little bit. Well, that's wind shear. The plane may be bumped down 50 feet. You're at 33,000 feet, no big deal. But we were at 33 feet. And when you go down 50 feet from 33 feet, it's a big deal. And suddenly, it's like an elevator, the cable is cut or something. Suddenly, the plane's on the ground, and while you're flying, you're steering with the yoke. But when you're on the ground, the yoke does nothing. You steer with your feet. And I'm struggling with the foot pedals to keep the plane going straight because I can see the end of the runway there. We're going to make it if I can just keep it going straight, and we're bouncing along over the little bumps, and there's grass sticking. And I can tell you, the weirdest thing in emergency situations, I had these three predominant thoughts in my mind. For some reason, I was thinking, first, I was like, oh, fine, I'm going to get grass stains all over my plane now. And then, of course, I also thought, why didn't I listen to that voice? And third, I thought, and why did the winning bidder have to be a lawyer? I do not want an attorney on my plane when I'm crashing. Still, I was able to keep the plane straight. We were bumping along, just heading right for the runway. We were just going to... And then I saw the ditch. And the landing gear, the nose gear, dropped down into the ditch, sheared off the bottom of the plane. If you have no landing gear, you're not in control. We slid down the runway on the belly of the plane. That particular model, the Cessna 182, has its carburetor on the bottom side of the block, so that was the first thing to be sheared off. So now my 55 gallons of fuel spilled out on the runway. Sparks are flying. Well, you know what happened next. Plane came to a halt. Cockpit filled with smoke. Fortunately, Pete had listened carefully to his instructions. He opened the door and got out with Gene. We ran from the plane and stood back and watched. And when the sheriff arrived and pulled his Instamatic out of the car, that was my Cessna 182. It's all that was left of it. Total loss. Insurance company paid for it. I'm very happy to tell you, not a scratch. We didn't have a singed hair. Perfect survival. Nothing bad. But man, did I learn some lessons that day. For one, you better believe I listened to that voice. The book I'm working on now is Gut Level Leadership, and it helps males primarily. Women, you know this already. Us dumb guys think, it has to be logically verifiable to be true. No, it does not have to be logically understandable at all to be true. People who make the best decisions in business and in life are people who check with their gut. What is my gut telling me to do? I learned that lesson. I certainly learned the lesson about the big picture, like don't think about grass stains, control the plane. And I also learned something about judging others. Because I was so worried about Pete Buck, thinking, oh gosh, now we've survived the crash, but now I can just see the lawsuits. What's going to... Emotional damage, failed marriage, dry cleaning for his pants. I know it's not going to be misrepresentation because the auctioneer did say, this will be an experience you'll never forget. I know it's not that. Hey, I was so wrong. This guy, Pete Buck, is a fantastic person. He didn't sue me. He invited me to the wedding. Their wedding video begins with this picture. I was with him for 4th of July this last year. I go every year. They come to all my parties. We've become more than great friends. I think there's something about a life bond going on here. I was so wrong about Pete. But I also learned something about failure. Because I certainly left that experience feeling that I had failed as a pilot. You're not supposed to have your plane burn up. And I'm so grateful to your hometown boy here, Henry Ford, for reminding us of what failure really means. Failure is the opportunity to begin again more intelligently. In fact, the auditorium next door where the losers are, they fail a lot less than winners fail. Because when losers fail, they step back and they say, oh, I'm never doing that again. I'm no good at that. I'll never do that again. Winners have an experience like this and say, oh, there are lessons in there that I can learn. In fact, one of the distinguishing characteristics of winners in life is that they encounter failures and recognize that in them lie the greatest lessons they can learn. And in fact, you hear it in their language because power talkers exhibit the third trait, which is that they rebound resiliently. They bounce back. Do bad things happen to successful people? Absolutely. More bad things happen to successful than unsuccessful people. Unsuccessful people encounter a bad situation dealing with collections or selling or emotional customers, and they go, oh, I'm not good at that. I better not do that. Winners encounter the same situation, and instead of saying, I failed, I'll never do that again, they say, okay, there's a lesson here. What can I learn from this experience? What shall I do differently the next time I approach such a situation? How can I extract from this great meaning that I can take forward in my career and in my personal life? Failure is what helps to shape the most successful people. Power talkers rebound resiliently. If you hear someone saying, if only I had, you know that's not a winner. The winner says, starting now, I will. Power talkers rebound resiliently. Okay, I'd like you to stand up, please. And while you're standing, would you give yourself a little neck massage here? Scalp and neck. Because here's an intellectually challenging part of the evening. Because, hey, until now, has everything I've said made sense? Yes. You know this. This is not academic. Yet, there is a scientific foundation for what we're talking about. And while you're standing for a moment, sit down whenever you'd like, but as you remain standing, I want to explain the intellectual, the scientific background, and I will particularly invite these people to sit down so we can see what's up on the screen. I want to introduce you to one of our nation's preeminent psychologists, Dr. Martin Seligman. He's written several books. They are great. I recommend them all. In particular, I'll recommend the book Learned Optimism by Dr. Martin Seligman. Fantastic person. Here's Dr. Seligman's approach. It's called cognitive restructuring. And in fact, okay, how many of you are clinically depressed? Okay, of course you wouldn't admit it. There are two very effective treatments for depression. One is a pharmaceutical approach, and drugs really work well with depressed people. So long as they take the drugs. They stop taking the drugs, they're depressed again. Cognitive restructuring is different. Cognitive restructuring does not involve any drugs at all. It involves a counselor helping you to redefine the way you view the experiences that have happened to you in life. It works wonders because you don't need to take drugs, and it has a much more persistent, a much more lasting effect. Here's the way it works. An individual, you and I and the people next door, all have an explanatory style. That is, a habitual way of speaking, a way of describing what goes on. And there are three measures of your explanatory style. The first has to do with what I'll call the first P, pervasiveness. Global and local are the two extremes. So, for example, in my plane crash, I could say, oh, everything's going wrong for me. I crashed the plane, I'm in bad health, my family's falling apart, I'm experiencing financial difficulties, now I've got a lawyer after me, all kinds of bad things. Or I could use local and localize it and say, well, yes, I did crash this plane. However, I'm in good health, we all survived, this person seems like the kind of guy who's not going to make my life miserable. I have a wonderful child. My life is going well. Yes, I crashed the plane, but it's only that one thing, pervasiveness. The second scale, which I'll call the second P, has to do with personalization, your role in the experience. I could crash the plane and either say, it's because I'm terrible at everything I do. I can't fly a plane. I'm lousy at everything. Or I can say, now what are the factors that brought about this crash? The NTSB report that you can see on the internet now says that there were unpredictable winds and that there was a contributing factor, was an uneven runway surface at the advance of the threshold. There are lots of reasons this happened. Certainly I had a role. It's not a matter of dodging responsibility. It's where are you on that scale? Is it everything because of me, I'm a bad person? Or is it because there were external factors that contributed to it? And the third scale has to do not with time, not with person, but instead with permanence. How long is this going to be around? Is this condition, I crashed the plane, I do everything wrong. Things always go wrong for me. I'm a loser in every area of my life, and I've always been a loser, and it's because I'm a rotten person. Or it can be unstable and say, well, things usually go right for me. This one instance didn't work out quite right. Now here's what cognitive restructuring is about. It's helping people move from one end of the scale to the other. So that if we deal with people who are in a situation where things go well, the losers, pessimists, and the optimists have completely different ways of describing what happened. For example, the optimists, when things go well, say, they are at the global end of pervasiveness. Not only did I win the sales contest, but I've got a great personal relationship, I have kids, I'm in good health, I'm doing well financially, life is rosy. They say, because I planned well and worked hard, that's why I won the sales contest. This is no lucky fluke, I brought this about. And things are going to continue to do well. I'll always do well in my life. On the other hand, next door, when things go well, the pessimist says the opposite end of the scale. Oh yeah, this one thing went right. Yeah, I won the sales contest, but the rest of my life is a mess. And it's certainly not because I was a good salesperson. It was because the really good salesperson was sick that month, or something, my territory was changed. It's not me, something outside brought this about. And I'm sure this won't continue. But what about when things go poorly? When negative things happen, we and the losers have a completely different language pattern. When things go poorly, optimists say, well, it's just that one thing. In other words, they localize it. They identify, yeah, I crashed the plane. However, I'm in good health. I have a wonderful relationship with my child. Financially, I'm doing fine. I have good friends. Yeah, one thing went wrong. Not everything. One thing went wrong. And there were circumstances that brought this about. Yes, I had a role, and I can change the way I play the hand I'm dealt. But there are other factors to consider. It's not because I'm a rotten person. And I'm sure things won't stay like this forever. The optimist says, yeah, once in a while things don't go the way you want. On the other hand, in the other auditorium where the pessimists are, they have a completely different way of viewing things. When things go poorly, the pessimist says, oh, everything's bad in my life. Not just this one thing. Sure, I lost the sales contest, and my health is declining, and my friends don't like me, and everything is wrong. And it's because I'm no good. It's internal. And it's gonna always be this way. Cognitive restructuring is about changing where you are in the scale. It's about consciously saying, as a doctor to a patient would say, now hold it, what you just said, you said you lost the sales contest because you are not a good salesperson. Are there some other factors here? Well, yeah, territories were realigned. Yeah, well, there is a tough economic environment right now. Well, yeah. So, in other words, the cognitive restructuring approach to people who are depressed is to say, let's shift your language to the other end of the scale. And in fact, with a very high reliability, Dr. Seligman or anybody who studies this field could listen in on you talking through the day to friends and to yourself and put you on the scale of optimist to pessimist, and you can change it. You can move. In fact, what I'm sharing with you tonight, these verbal strategies for improving the image you project to others, your ability to get cooperation from them, and the ability to motivate yourself, is all something that you can do. Now, I said there are 9 trait areas. And for each of them, we're looking at some examples. I certainly don't expect that this evening you go, oh, well, I heard some stories, and I'm going to quit saying I'll have to, and I'll always say I'll be glad to. How about problem? Instead of saying problem, gee, that makes me want to back away from things. If I run into a customer's challenging situation, I feel better than if I run into a customer's problem situation. Problems I go away from, challenges I move toward. Oh, I could change that. Instead of saying, I can't get you the report till Friday, I could say, I can get you the report on Friday. You could make lots of individual changes. But there's a big difference between simple and easy. It's not easy to change lifelong habits, obviously. Hey, don't make this mistake. Don't make the mistake of sitting in your chair and seeing me up here saying, oh, Mr. Author guy, he's learned these 50 things. No, I work on this every day. Last night, my flight arrived here just past 10 o'clock. I had my Yahoo map directly to the address on Franklin, where the Embassy Suites is, over on Franklin here. And just about 7 or 8 minutes after 12, I was at a mobile station with very thick bulletproof glass near Franklin in downtown Detroit, wondering why were all these young children out after midnight. And I was completely lost, and I handed my little map to the lady under the, the little place you slip the money through, and I asked, Embassy Suites, where's Franklin? It's got to be close here. I followed the directions. She's, Embassy Suites? And she looked completely baffled, never heard of Embassy Suites. I immediately thought, oh, God, she's obviously never been anywhere. She's stupid. I didn't think, maybe I'm in the wrong place. And then a rather disheveled woman who you wouldn't pick out walking down the street, there's a smart, capable person, I'll ask her. But she saw me with this map, and she took the map and started saying, oh, okay, now, you know what you'd have, let me see, how would you get to Franklin here? And I'm thinking, okay, just humor her, she doesn't know. And then this really big, mean-looking guy comes over, takes one look and says, that's in Southfield. And she says, so what, do you work for the post office? And he said, yes, I work for the post office. It's in Southfield. And that woman got out her pencil and made me a little map that got me directly to Embassy Suites last night and basically saved my ass. So I found myself driving over here thinking, if only I had checked the zip code. And I go, oh no, wait a minute. If only I had known. Starting now, I will. Whenever I'm flying into a city that I've not been to recently, I'll check the zip code. And I also thought, at the rental counter at the airport, I showed the map to the dollar rental guy. I said, does this make sense to you? He looked it over. Yep, that looks good to me. I thought, how could he have let me go the wrong way? I thought, hold it. It is not his responsibility. It's my responsibility. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, don't think that because I wrote the book and I give the speech that I've got this down. I work on it every day. Being a power talker does not mean, okay, there are 50 things, don't say that instead. I've mastered them, now I'm a power talker. No. It means that you decide every day to pay careful attention to the impact that your words have on others, on the image you project to them, on the level of cooperation you get from them, and on how they will affect you. Power talkers decide to take charge and to use their language, their daily interactions with others, to create the most positive outcomes they can. Being here tonight is a wonderful step in that direction. And it's a long time journey. It's simple changes, it's not easy changes. Also, during the break, several people said, oh, gee, do you still fly? And it's kind of an interesting situation. First of all, I didn't tell you the whole story about that crash. Because there were actually 4 passengers on board. My 6-year-old daughter was on board. One of the things I learned in that experience, when Pete got out with Jean, I, of course, grabbed my daughter from the back and pulled her from the plane, and we ran away. I was very interested in sort of watching myself outside my body, looking at how I handled it, and it was amazing to me that I didn't feel my heart was racing, I didn't feel in any panic, I felt absolutely calm and cool. I thought, this is odd. The one sensation I noticed physically is that I had an unquenchable thirst. My mouth was so dry. And people came out from along the airstrip and gave me gallons of water. No matter how much I drank, I was still thirsty, my mouth was still dry. Yet, I didn't panic, I didn't in any way fall apart. Until I put my daughter to bed. When she was in bed, I knelt down beside her bed and I cried all night long. And I guess partly it was that I wanted her to see her dad being strong in an emergency situation. I knew that for me to freak out was not going to make anything any better. But when I knew she was safe in her bed, man, I just cried all night. Another thing that came out of that experience is that at the time I was going through a divorce. My former wife, we had shared custody at the time, and naturally Mom freaked out. Her daughter, I don't think she minded that I almost died, but her daughter. And so I made a solemn promise that I would not take Kelsey in any small planes. Subsequently, my former wife decided to leave the country. And I had an opportunity at that time to either become a visiting, summer vacation dad or a full-time dad. And I paid attention to that voice inside me that said, the most important thing I will ever do in my life is raise this child. And I am so grateful. Thank you. You parents know why you're applauding is because not only is the most important thing for the child, it's been the best thing that ever happened in my life is to be a full-time dad. Well, because I had made the promise to not take my daughter in any small planes, when I subsequently became her custodial parent, if I can't fly with my daughter, I ain't flying. You can't dabble at flying. You better do it all the time and keep it up. And so it was out of the question. So now I ride motorcycles. Gotta do something fun. And it's interesting how we get our lessons in life. Partway through the process of writing the book on which this evening's program is based, and which some of you are getting at the table, partway through that process, I was not making any headway with my writing. And I'd love to tell you, that I had a big optimistic, outgoing spirit about all. I didn't. I was going like, oh, you're such a procrastinator. You haven't even started. The manuscript is due in 4.5 months. You haven't even begun. And I was kind of beating myself up. And I thought, I have clients calling. They want me to come give presentations. I can't get started. Oh, I got to get out. I got to do something. And I said to my wife, let's go to Hawaii. We'll get a condo. I'll take the laptop. We'll just go have 2 weeks of peace and tranquility. At that time, my daughter was 6 months old, little baby. I thought, perfect, I'll go and write. And my wife said, well, what do you plan to do? Just leave our daughter with the hotel babysitter or something? I go, oh, that's right. No, that wouldn't be good. My wife had 2 children from a former marriage, and they were being raised by their father. They lived in Canada. And I said, hey, I know what? Let's invite your 2 kids to come on the trip with us, because after all, they're teenagers now, and so they'll be able to help out caring for Kelsey. And I can get some work done. Oh, some of you have teenagers. Well, because I was not a full-time stepdad of these teens, I didn't really know about teenage behavior, so I said, oh, well, you're probably right. They may take a lot of attention, so I know what? Let's have each of them bring one of their teenage friends along. So the 4 teenagers, the baby, my wife, and I headed off to Hawaii for 2 weeks of peace and tranquility. I got nothing done. I had a terrible time. I mean, the whole time. Jesse would come up from the beach. He'd come to the front door of the condo. There was a little shower head down on the ground beside the front door to shower, wash your feet off. He'd look at it. He'd go into the middle of the living room. Say, boy, look at all this sand here. Then he'd brush it off on the carpet and he'd grind his heels in. Well, don't do that. Wash off outside. Then he'd head for the refrigerator and say, man, it's so hot. I'm really thirsty. He'd open the refrigerator. He'd see the glasses on the counter. He'd look in the refrigerator. There'd be that cardboard carton of guava juice. He would reach for the carton, belt it back, take every drop, and then, you know the kid. Then he'd put the empty carton back in the refrigerator, leave it open, turn and walk away. I mean, the whole time I'm going, pick up your towels, shower off outside, use the glass, be considerate. It was horrible. I had a terrible time. And I finally said, those teenagers have ruined this trip. I'm not getting anything done. I'm having a terrible time. And my wife was standing there with me, and she said, oh, that's interesting. Those teenagers are ruining your trip. Huh. And she started waggling these 3 fingers. Now let me tell you, if you write books about how to communicate positively, it is extremely annoying to be married to someone who has read them. Because Waggling her fingers was her way of reminding me about a chapter I had written concerning one of my most important teachers, Edith Walther, my mom. That's my mom. On the left there, Edith. I remember when I didn't have a book report due one night. It was ready to be turned in the next morning, but I hadn't done it. My mom said, "Well, why isn't it done? You've had it for a week." And I pointed at my typewriter and said, "The typewriter broke." I had this sort of a aqua coral-colored Smith Corona typewriter. I said, "Well, the typewriter broke." And my mom pointed at the typewriter and said, "Oh, I see one finger pointing at the typewriter, but look where the other three fingers are pointing." And she made me laboriously, she went through each finger. "What does this finger say?" "That one says the typewriter broke." "What's this one say?" "You know, this one says I shouldn't have waited until the night before it was due." "Uh-huh. What does this one say?" "This one says I should have checked the typewriter to make sure it was working." "And what about this one?" "This one says I should have had a backup plan in case the typewriter didn't work, some other way to get it turned in." In other words, it's not the typewriter's responsibility to get the book report done. Bring the responsibility back where it belongs. The teenagers didn't ruin my trip. My reaction to, obviously, what you're attesting to is normal teenage behavior, that's what ruined the trip. The fourth trait of power talkers is that they accept personal responsibility. You hear it in the way they speak. Powerless people say, "I can't stand it. Why can't my leadership team get there on time? They're late for meetings. It throws off the whole schedule. They're bad." Power talkers pay attention to the three fingers pointing back at them and say, "Given that that's the fact, what can I do about the situation? Since people tend to be late for meetings, what can I do to alter my approach so of punctuality to them, given that this is their normal behavior? What can I do to change the way I react, the way I handle the situation?" Power talkers accept personal responsibility. And there's so many examples of this in our daily interactions. Hey, suppose you're talking to a customer. Your gut tells you that this customer isn't really following you. They don't quite get what you're trying to explain. If you say, "You know, I don't think you really understand," what do they hear? "You're stupid. You're not intellectually capable of keeping up with my very clear explanation." You didn't say that, but when you say, "You don't understand," that's what they hear. Power talkers recognize that responsibility lies with these three fingers, so instead of "you don't understand," when you see that a customer doesn't understand what you're saying, you say, "You know, I don't think I'm..." You didn't say that, but when you say, "You don't understand," you're doing a good job of explaining this. It's our responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, you're here because you want to take control of the way your communication impacts others. If you say you don't understand, you and I need to make the leap to say, how is this going to affect the other person? When you say you don't understand, they're going to think, "Hey, he's calling me stupid." And there goes cooperation. Instead, to say, "You know, I don't think I'm explaining this clearly enough." Power talkers accept responsibility. And the fifth trait of power talkers is that they are very good at building cooperation. I got a surprise for you here. Next meeting with Carrie, who's a wonderful presenter, is not going to be here at the Star Theater. In fact, it's wherever you want it to be, because Michael is chartering a 757 and taking you all wherever you want to go. You can have the seminar anywhere. You get to pick. Where would you like it to be? Hawaii? I disagree. I disagree. What is your name, please? D? Interesting. D said Hawaii. I said I disagree. If you were standing where I am and you saw Dee's face, you would notice a change happened when I said disagree. Because it comes out of my mouth, D-I-S-A-G-R-E-E. But by the time it gets into her ear and hits her brain, she hears something completely different. What do people hear when you say, I disagree? You are wrong. What a bad choice. Weren't you listening to my story about Hawaii? What an idiotic thing. That's a wrong answer. I didn't say that. But the word disagree, those of you who took Psych, remember Psych 101, the principle of cognitive dissonance. Principle of cognitive dissonance is simply this: people like to be right. When people say, oh no, you're not right, you're wrong, they then dig in their heels and are determined to prove that they were right all along. Because D now, her mind is busily going to justify, let's see, I said Hawaii for a very good reason. Here are 3 reasons why Hawaii is the right. She doesn't hear what I say. She's busy justifying her position. If you say to somebody in a conversation, you know, I disagree with what you're saying, they now get the clear message that this is a showdown. Only one of us is right, and it ain't you. And therefore, they don't want to cooperate. So power talkers are very conscious of their need to create positive interactions with others and build cooperation. And in fact, it's the next trait area of power talkers. They're very good at creating cooperation. Where regular people might say, you know, I disagree with what you're saying, power talkers instead would say, you know, I understand what you're saying, and at the same time, let's also consider this additional information. In other words, it's not one of us is right and one of us is wrong. You're the wrong one. But rather, there's some value in what you're saying. There may be some value in my ideas. In fact, maybe we can come up with a third approach that's different from what you thought and what I thought. Let's take the best of both and put them together. Power talkers build cooperation. And sometimes that's a matter of avoiding things like we talked about earlier, but avoiding words that make people feel conflict. It's certainly avoiding words like disagree. And it is instead building in the direction of cooperation. How many people here are in the sales profession? So who's not then? Okay, only one wrong answer. We all are, of course. And in its essence, building cooperation is the process of selling. It's building cooperation. But funny, you know, you don't often go to parties and have someone say, hey, I'm a salesperson. You know, they're not, people aren't all that proud of it. And I notice for myself, you know, when I leave you this evening, I'll get a good night's sleep, I'll head back to Seattle tomorrow, and definitely, when I'm on the plane tomorrow, hey, when I close tonight and go back to my room, I'm played out. I'm talked out. When I get on the plane tomorrow, the person next to me will certainly say, oh, were you going to Seattle? Do you live in Detroit? No, I live in Seattle. Oh, well, what brought you to Detroit? You know, they want to start a friendly conversation. If I say, oh, well, I'm a speaker, and I write business books, and I was given a presentation last night, and they're thinking, oh, that's interesting. I've never met a speaker before. Now, what did you say? And they're thinking, okay, we've got 3 hours here. Give me a seminar. Now, what I really would like to say is, give me a break. I'm all talked out. I need to rest. But this would be rude. So I found the best way to handle it is I simply say, oh, me? I sell life insurance. Those of you in financial services know, this is magic. They will not, even though there's nothing to look at, they'll be glued to the window the whole time. They're not what to risk talking to a salesperson. Why is it people have this image? But let's go to the dictionary. Let's look it up. You know, the way dictionaries work, incidentally, is not some literary academicians write in the dictionary what words should mean. They instead literally send out postcards with a word written on it to thousands and thousands of people, and they ask you to write what it means to you, and then they compile those. Dictionaries, in other words, reflect common usage. They don't set usage. So let's go to Webster's. Let's look up sell. What does it have to say about sell? Well, let's see. It's pretty small print, but there are some words that jump out, like betray, cheat. Oh, I have not altered this definition. This is in Webster's. This is the definition of sell. Let's hold it. Let's get a closer look. This can't be right. Let's get a closer look here. Let's see. To deliver or give up in violation of duty, trust, or loyalty. To betray, especially foolishly or dishonorably. To deliver into slavery for money. Hold it. To impose upon, to cheat. That's the dictionary definition of sell. How it got there, of course, is salespeople put it there. Salespeople put it there by treating customers in a manner that makes them not want to be sold to. Now, fortunately, we're talking about the salespeople in the other auditorium, not us. Still, we've got to recognize going in that people have a predisposition to not want to be sold to because they perceive that salespeople are going to... When those kind of salespeople talk to me, I feel like, okay, they just came out of the training seminar, and the training seminar said, these are the 17 key wonderful things about our product. Make sure you do not let the customer get a word in edgewise. They're going like, there are 17 reasons why you should buy from me. Now, do not interrupt. I've got to give you all 17. That's not the way to sell. And you know, as a speaker, I'll often hear one of my colleagues, somebody who you hear at Yes, and I might be sitting in the audience saying, well, hold it, wait a minute, that's my material. And I think, well, no, is that, or did I hear that from someone else? Because there's only so much truth going around. But what I'm going to share with you now, I remember the shower I was standing in when I thought of this. It was purple tile. It was in Niles, Illinois. If you ever hear anybody talk about CPR selling, that's my material. Here's the best way to sell. First, quit closing sales. Because remember, we're here tonight talking about the impact language has on us and our behaviors. What is in your words is in your mind, is in your actions. Well, closing sales, that means like, I got the signature, I've got the money, I'm out of here. And no wonder customers feel like they're really romanced when they're prospects, and when they become customers, it's not such a pleasant experience. So let's remember that if you use terminology, common terminology like closing sales, there's that link, that connection between your mouth, your brain, and your behavior. If you say you closed the sale, it's like giving yourself permission to walk away and abandon this customer. Because every customer conversation is not a closed deal. You don't close sales. Every conversation is a step in the direction of nurturing a long-term relationship. And so I want to have you purge closing sales. Just get that term out. And instead, when you're talking about a situation where you would normally say, hey, I closed a sale, instead talk about having initiated or opened a relationship. Instead of talking about a customer service problem you had to solve, talk about nurturing the relationship and extending the relationship because, of course, profits in business result from long-term customer relationships. That's why earlier we focused on building referrals. Referrals come from customers who are pleased with their relationship. They don't give up referrals to those with whom they don't have a basis of trust. It's all about building long-term trust. So instead of closing sales, I want you to administer CPR. And I'm not talking about, knock them down to the pavement and start beating on their chest. Instead, CPR is an acronym that stands for what I believe to be the 3 simple and typically overlooked guides to good selling. The first is to ask questions. The number one mistake salespeople make, no matter how many books, videos, seminars they go to, salespeople talk too much. The best trait a salesperson can have is to ask good questions. They come in 3 varieties. Open-ended question, for example, those of you who are in real estate sales here, is not to say, let me tell you about the 7 houses I have listed in this area, and let me tell you why my brokerage is the best one, let me tell you why I'm wonderful. The best thing to do is to say, tell me, as you choose a realtor to help you in selecting your new home, what are the things that are most important to you? And then you have to shut up. It's very hard for salespeople to do. You have to shut up and let them tell you. An open-ended question allows you to assess their communication style so you can tune into it. It allows them to tell you what they care most about. It allows you to tailor the approach you're going to use to what they really want. Multiple choice questions help your prospect or your customer steer you toward the best solution for their set of needs. Is convenience in commuting to work more important to you, or is it resale value for your home? Is it the ability to expand your home as your family grows, or are you looking for a place that you can be comfortable in for the rest of your life and not have to expand? Incidentally, for realtors in the audience, yesterday I signed the final documents. I am moving from my current 3,500-foot home to a 1,600-foot home. It's the great downsizing experiment. And I go back tomorrow to finish packing up, to move in on Friday, and it's so exciting to me that if somebody were selling a house to me, I wasn't looking for a house. I just fell in love. I just saw this cottage and thought, I want to live there. It's less than half the size of my current home, but isn't it time I got rid of that junk that I just keep moving from house to house? So, very important that we ask our prospects what they care about. Multiple choice lets them steer you toward what they care most about. And yes, no questions are only useful in two situations. One is when you really don't want to make a sale. I'm in real estate. Want to buy a house from me? No. Oh, sorry I bothered you. The second situation, though, is one in which your gut tells you you're being strung along. You know, there are some customers you deal with and you just know they're not going to buy. And this yes, no question comes into play when you say to your customer, to your client, buying a home is such a big decision, and I'm really glad that you've been taking time to thoughtfully approach it. I'm glad I've showed you the 17 homes that fit your needs. It was my pleasure to show you the last 7 of them 4 times. I know that you wanted to have your out-of-town family come and see them too. I was happy to get the tax records and the duplicates for the tax records that you lost. Are you going to buy a home or not? Because if they're not, get them to say no. In that case, now you can focus your attention on somebody who's going to do business with you. Some people aren't, but they just can't bring themselves to say so. So you want to kind of flesh them out. Get them to tell you where they stand. The C is to consult. Ask good questions. And the P is to personalize it. That is to match the benefits you know that apply either to your service or the particular product, or for realtors to the home that you're selling, to match, based on what you're telling me, what's most important to you is, the reason I see this home as being a good fit for your needs is, in other words, make the match for them. And then, remember what we're here for tonight? We're focusing on the importance of language, the link between your words, your thoughts, and your actions. Then I invite you to use the word recommend. The R of CPR is to recommend. Because typical sales posture is to get behind someone and try to push them toward what you want them to do. Recommending is getting beside your customer through a process of asking questions and personalizing. Develop the dialogue. What do you need? This would fit. In other words, an advisor, a consultant, helps customers and the advisor makes recommendations that are in the customer's best interest. So I would like you, even if you don't remember CPR, I would like you to remember the word recommend. Because if you adopt as your goal in selling the ability to make recommendations for your clients, that will keep you on the track. Hey, you can't make a recommendation if you don't know what's good for them. You can't know what's good for them if you don't ask questions. So as long as your goal is to make recommendations for your client, psychologically you'll be keeping yourself on track, focused on your client's needs. This trait of power talkers is that they are very good at building cooperation. They sell well. They have customers who enjoy working with them. And they have customers who they know rely on them. In fact, the 6th trait of power talkers is that they are decisive. I remember this home that I live in now that I'll now be selling. Anybody want the listing? It's in Seattle. This home, I know when I purchased this home originally, there were all these flyers around the neighborhood. It was a brand new neighborhood with people who were, screens, $14.95 any size window. And they all looked about the same, and one was for Ed's Screen Service. And I remember I called up Ed's Screen Service and said, I just bought this home, and here's how many windows and sliding doors there are. And he gave me a price for the home. They were all the same. They're basically the same price. And I thought, what's the difference? And I called Ed's Screen Service. And he came out, and he said he should be out there first thing Thursday morning. Well, he didn't show up till afternoon, but okay. And he came out and he measured, and he gave me the price, and sure enough, the price was acceptable. I said, well, how long before I get the screens? He said, well, it should be within 2 weeks. I said, okay, 2 weeks, I can wait. And the bugs are around, but 2 weeks I can make it. Well, after 3 weeks, I called Ed and said, hey, you said 2 weeks, but I had to tell the answering service because Ed wasn't there. And they said, well, we'll take the message and he should call you back tomorrow. But he didn't call back tomorrow. And I left this series of messages. I finally left 3 messages in one day. The third message said, tell Ed he may place the screens wherever he wishes because I'm canceling the order. If he won't return my call, I'm canceling the order. What do you know? Ed called back. He said, oh, gee, what do you know? The screens just came in. I should have them out there for you Friday morning. Well, okay, so it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but all right. And he installed the screens. It was okay. Everything was okay. And I followed Ed out to the truck, and I wrote him his check. And as he was getting in the truck, I thought, you know, my goal is to help people. I focus on language and selling relationships. I want to do Ed a little favor. I said, you know, Ed, before you leave, I just want to let you know, I write books about how to communicate more positively. And, you know, there's something about your style of communication that I haven't felt very good about because you actually have never done anything you've said you would do. You haven't called back, you didn't come there on Friday, you weren't there in the morning. And as your customer, I just felt you should know, I felt disappointed. The screens are fine, but I felt disappointed about the way you've handled dealing with me. And Ed said, hey, 99 out of 100 you can please. There's always somebody who no matter what you do, you can't make them happy. And he slammed the door and he left with a screech. And I was just like, I'm trying to help him. And then I thought, let's see, I'll stop payment on the check. And then I realized, no. Ed did nothing wrong. He never violated a commitment. He never made a commitment. Had I been paying attention, I'd have noticed that he always said, I should have them in 2 weeks. I should be there Thursday. He never said what he would do, only what he should do. And I have since learned that when you hear somebody who says, I should be able to do this, I should do that, don't count on it. Powerless people, the ones in the other auditorium, are not decisive. When they speak, they say things like, I should be able to probably have that completed by, about Thursday. Don't count on it. When someone says, I will have that for you, that's the person you can rely on. Power talkers, with their language, convey that idea that you can count on them to do what they say they will do. Power talkers are decisive. Incidentally, note there's a difference here. Okay, here's a question. If you are on vacation and you order room service and your breakfast is delivered to your room in 22 minutes, will you be happy or not happy with the 22-minute wait? It depends. Depends. If there's a little placard at your bedside table that says, express breakfast, delivered in 15 minutes, then from 14 minutes on, you're going, what is wrong with them here? Where is my breakfast? They are so slow at this place. What is wrong with them? But if you place your order and they say, I'll have that up within half an hour, and you hear a knock at 22 minutes, you're going, man, they're fast. What great service they have here. It's the same 22 minutes. Your satisfaction is dependent on the gap between what happens and what you expect to happen. So if you think you're going to get it done by Thursday, don't say, I should have it by Thursday. Don't say, I'll try to have it by Thursday. Don't even say, I will have it by Thursday. Say, I will have it by Friday. Then deliver on Thursday. They now go, whoa! Beat his word! We want the people with whom we deal not just to know that they can rely on us to follow through. We want to consistently surprise them that we did better than they expected. We set their expectations with our language. And of course, this also builds in a safety cushion because sometimes unforeseen circumstances make it impossible for you to do things as well as you would like to. And when you have built in that safety cushion, you can at least meet their expectations even if you don't exceed them. Power talkers speak decisively. You know you can rely on them. They don't say what they should do, they say what they will do. They don't say, I'll try to get that done. They say, I will get that done. Now, to be honest, we're covering so many different approaches, so many different phrases here. And while they're all important, to tell you the truth, the one that means the most to me, and I want to level with you on this, candidly speaking now, let me be frank. Okay, so what are you thinking when someone says this? Yeah, let me be honest with you. I'm not honest with other people. Let me tell you the truth, as opposed to the lies I've been telling you up until now. The seventh trait of power talkers is that they tell the truth. It's so common. You say it now. I've pretty well purged myself of this, but it's such an epidemic of habitual phrases that people say, well, to tell you the truth, honestly, frankly, let me level with you, all of which imply that it's not your normal behavior. Yet, how many of you have read that book, The Millionaire Next Door, one of the books in the series, Millionaire Next Door? Excellent series. I highly recommend it. And before I read that book, I had a wrong impression, as do most people who read the book. And that is, you say, well, the author set out to say, what is it about millionaires that makes them different from other people? What about people who achieve financial security? What's different? And most of us, myself included, think, oh, okay, well, they're extra smart. Or they're taller than everybody else, or they come from families of privilege, or they graduate at the top of their class, or they got some special, there's some inside deal. Turns out not to be the case. People who achieve financial success are not extra bright. They didn't graduate at the top of their class. They don't have special family backgrounds. They're simply down-to-earth people who set a plan, who work consistently, who save money, who have goals in mind. They're regular people. When the author interviews the millionaires and says, what is it about you that made you achieve financial success? They don't say, well, I'm extra smart, or boy, I was a good student. They don't say that. The number one answer is, I'm honest. People know they're going to get fair treatment from me. They know they can rely on me. They know I'll do what I said I will do. I have built a lifetime track record of honesty. Caution. Ladies and gentlemen, caution. Everything I've said up until now this evening has involved a substitution. I've said, don't say problem, say challenge. Don't say, I can't seat you until 3, say, I can seat you at 3. Don't say, I'll have to call you back, say, I'll be glad to call you back. In every case, except one, there's a substitution, there's a better way to say things. There is no better way to say, I am an honest person. There's no phrase you can use. All you can do is create a lifetime pattern, a record of people knowing that you are truthful. Don't lie. Don't lie on the little things. For yourself, establish for yourself a personal 100% record of you tell the truth. And I'm not just talking about big lies, little things like, okay, anybody here married still? Okay, so, you never take the trash out on time. Never? I think there was once, 4 years ago, didn't I take it? You always do this. You never do that. Those are not truthful statements. It is also not truthful. Okay, this is getting a little extreme. Something you will not hear me say is, I don't remember. Because literally, from a biological standpoint, you remember everything from the moment of your birth. Some would say from the moment of your conception, or at least some point as you were developing in your mom's womb, you started remembering things. Right now, you remember every sound, every smell, every sight, everything that's occurred to you in all your life. Now, you might not recall it at this moment, but you do remember it. So if you say to someone, geez, I can't remember, that's literally not true. That's a lie. It's also a destructive lie. Because when you say, I can't remember, you're saying, my brain has limited power. No. There is no supercomputer, no Cray, no supercomputer on Earth comes close to the processing and memory storage capabilities of your brain right now. We have such a phenomenal resource. We don't forget anything. So don't say, I can't remember. Personally, what I say is, I don't recall. Because that's actually fact. It's in there. I'm not pulling it out right now. I might not be remembering at this moment what that phone number is, but it's in there. Power talkers tell the truth in every instance. And you know, I started off at the beginning of our program tonight saying that you wouldn't learn anything new. And I hope so far, everything I've touched on, you've said, no, I noticed that. When someone says, I'll tell you the truth, you get a little suspicious of them right away. The 8th trait of power talkers is that they remember the basics. And we're talking real basics that are very infrequently practiced for some reason. The first is that power talkers remember the basics by using other people's names. In moderation! Caution! And I add this caution because I remember shooting a video series in Denver. I was in a TV studio. The producer's name was Joe. And Joe said, it was a 12-hour video series. Joe said, George, this is going to be such a fantastic program. You have just great material here. George, I've been all through your outline. I see all the points you're going to cover. George, they are so right on. It's going to be great. And George, you know, there's one thing I noticed in looking over your outline that you didn't specifically focus on. And George, I want to encourage you to add this chunk of material because, George, it is so important. Because after all, George, I sell myself. And one of the most powerful things any salesperson can do, George, I'm sure you've noticed this yourself, is to use the other person's name. And I'm thinking, don't say it again, not one more time. You know, nails on the blackboard, George. It's like fake, phony, fake, manipulative. So I suggest 3 times. When the other person says their name the first time, say it right then. Say it back. Scott, it's a pleasure to meet you. At some point during the conversation, say it once. The last thing in the conversation, Scott, I enjoyed talking with you. Just 3 times is fine. Oh. How many people here would say you're really not that good with remembering names? My hand's up. This is an area that I personally work on. Excellent. Thank you very much. Please come pick up this book at the break. Excellent. Thank you for catching me. Very good. I have difficulty recalling names. So, you know the situation. Oh, what's that guy's name? I know it. What's his name? And you're always coming over. Oh, what am I going to say? You know, I hate to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't remember your name. You hope somebody else will say it. And you go, oh, that's right, it's Dave. Or you could say, I'm so sorry, you have to excuse me. I'm just terrible with names. I'm a klutz, you know, I'm an idiot. Why not do this? Why not say, hey, great to see you, George Walther. Because when you extend your hand and extend your name, hey, chances are he's over there going, what's that guy's name? When you walk over and say your name, their natural reaction, of course, is to say their name back to you. They're probably feeling relieved that you volunteered your name. Instead of going around beating yourself up saying, oh, I'm just terrible with names, I can't recall names. Instead, walk over and announce your name. That puts the other person at ease. They say your name, and it's all taken care of. Power talkers practice the basics, and they use other people's names. Power talkers also, they make mistakes. And when they do, they apologize. And they admit it. I don't know why, those people in the other room, the losers, somehow they got it in their heads that admitting to a mistake makes them look bad. It's not the case. When you admit to a mistake, I know I'm dealing with a printer right now and a designer. I'm doing a redesign of my logo and my whole corporate look is I'm kind of rebranding myself. And I just was reviewing the proofs that come from the printer, and I go, hey, what about the red bar along the bottom? And this guy, Scott Michelson, looked at me and said, You know, that's my mistake. We left that out. I don't think, oh, he's terrible. He made a mistake. I think, okay, this is a guy that's confident enough that can say, oops, glad you caught that. I made that mistake. I think more of him. My esteem for him elevates when someone admits a mistake. Don't you find that to be the case? Isn't it refreshing when someone says, this is my responsibility? Power talkers remember the basics and admit when they're wrong. And power talkers, boy, how basic could this be? Power talkers say thank you. I had an experience just before we began this program that reminded me of the simple ways it makes a big difference to say thank you. I found this amazing. I buy most of my garments at the Men's Warehouse. And I don't know if those of you who shop at Men's Warehouse, yes, it's excellent value. Yes, there are lots of stores and all that. I notice, though, that the way they treat me so often makes me feel good about doing business there. And one little secret surprise is that any garment you buy at Men's Warehouse, they will press for you at any time for free. Now, when you have a garment dry cleaned, the fabric deteriorates and it's harmful. You shouldn't dry clean everything all the time. You should have it pressed, dry clean, press, dry clean. So, I mean, I drive in with my clothes to be proud. I think this is wonderful. They press for free. Not only that, they press out of town for free. So just before we began this evening, I dropped my suit off at the Men's Warehouse over on Lake Orchard Road, and they pressed it. Orchard Lake Road. And just before we began this program, I took the suit off the hanger, and inside was a note, handwritten from Amar Jargis. Thank you for giving me the chance to serve you. He's thanking me for pressing my suit for free. Am I going back? I buy everything from them. It's the little touches. Expressing appreciation doesn't happen often enough. We all... Okay. Close your eyes for just a moment in deep contemplation. Close your eyes. Think back over your life. Think of all the good things you've done for other people. Think of that. You weigh it out all the years of your life. What good things have you done for others? Okay, now think about the appreciation you have received from others. All your life. Okay, those of you who have received more appreciation than you deserve, raise your hand, please. Okay, there are always a couple people who don't understand the question. None of us get the appreciation we deserve, and our customers are just like us. We're going through life going, I do a lot of good stuff. I don't get appreciated much. When someone says, thank you for giving me the pleasure of pressing your suit for free, like, yeah, I've been waiting for this. I'll go back. Power talkers express appreciation. What did you come here for tonight?
Learn.
I'm glad you came here to learn. I'm glad you came here for education. I hope you came here because you want to do something with this. But what? I got a game plan for you. What can you do right now? My hope, of course, is at this point that you remember many of the substitutions we've talked about, that you review your notes. Some of you will get really serious and watch the video and listen to the CDs and really put it into practice. But to make this be a reality, a part of your daily life, which, as I say, I work on every day. Don't think you're going to hear this once and go, oh, yeah, I'll never say that again. Here's some steps I want to encourage you to take. First is to notice yourself and others, and you will. The next person who says to you, well, to be honest, you'll definitely notice. The next time when someone says, I'll have to call you back, you're going to be thinking, you know, that would sound a lot better if you said, I'd like to call you back. The next time someone says, you know, I've really got a problem with this customer, you're going to be thinking, you know, you'd have a much more positive approach to things if you said, I have a challenge with this customer's account. The next greeter at a restaurant who says, I can't seat you until 9:30, you're going to be thinking, you know, you could have said, I'll be glad to seat you at 9:30. You will notice yourself and others. I invite you to select an office supporter. Perhaps you have a colleague here who's gone through the same curriculum that we have done today. If not, then tomorrow do your own little training session. And for those of you tomorrow who go back and kind of give a little mini seminar, you could bite it off. You could take it, say, like one phrase at a time. Let's go through the 50 phrases one at a time. And you say to those who are around you, please help me. I'm not even aware of how frequently I say these things. So some people, they'll take a wide rubber band and kind of write in there, okay, I'll have to. That's what they're going to stop saying. And you say, hey, if you hear me say I'll have to, just reach over and give it a little snap, and whap, ooh, it hurts. And you learn. And if you don't learn, then we've got the advanced course in power. Get somebody at work to help you pay attention, and of course pay attention to them. Do it at home. Hey, if you go back to your kids and say, I'll give you 50 cents every time you catch me saying I'll have to, it's amazing how helpful they will be. I definitely invite you to take advantage of the reinforcement materials. Start with one target phrase. Just decide, I'm not going to say I'll have to. I'm going to always say I'll be glad to, I'd like to, I'll be happy to. Start in one place. Take advantage of the reinforcement materials available here tonight. Take a refresher course on tonight and make it an intense one. I also invite you to visit the website where you can download for free. You'll see it's very obvious there that there's a 50-phrase reference card so that you can print it out and have it right by your phone so you can keep track of all 50 phrases. You can do this. It's not easy. It is simple. It is simple to say one by one, these are the phrases I'm going to stop saying and here's what I'm going to say instead. Especially when you have a partner, I'm going to stop saying and here's what I'm going to say instead. It is simple. It's at home and a partner at work helping you to focus on those phrases. I'll tell you why I'm here. I'm here because of the 9th trait of power talkers. I'm here because my dad loved baseball. He was a baseball nut. So I'm a speaker. I'm not doing a good job of explaining this. My dad loved baseball. And in fact, his dream was to be a professional ball player. He grew up in Sacramento, California. And he told me about the day that a scout came out from Detroit to watch. They travel around to the small towns and ask around who's the best ball player in town. And in Sacramento, everybody said, Merle Walther, he's the best ball player. And this scout watched my dad play first base. My dad was a talented guy. And he told me about this situation in which the scout came to his home, and his father, my grandfather John, which was a converted barn in Sacramento, my dad said that the very best day of his life was the day when this baseball scout came and said to his father, Mr. Walther, this boy of yours, Merle, he's a heck of a good first baseman, got long arms, very lanky, throws well, got a great reach, hits well. I want to take him to Detroit. I think he can play in the big leagues. And as my dad described this encounter, he said that his father stood there with his arms crossed and said, I know about those baseball players. They chew tobacco, they drink liquor, they chase women. My dad said, he's here going, yes, yes, women, liquor, yes. But his dad said, not my boy. My boy's going to have a real career. He's going to be an engineer. Walther is a German name. There was no further discussion. My dad became an engineer. For 40 years, my dad worked for the phone company in San Francisco in a sort of a middle-level engineering job. And I know that for those 40 years, my dad resented that he didn't get to do what he loved and regretted and probably didn't feel very good about his dad. Now, when I was a kid, well, one great moment in my dad's life was April 13, 1949, when I was born, because what do you suppose he saw when he looked in the nursery at that hospital? Aha! There's the ball player my dad didn't let me be. Unfortunately for my dad, I don't like baseball. I'm not interested. This is my deal. This is what I love to do. I don't like to play baseball. I remember my 3rd year in the farm league, in Little League, going, Dad, I just don't like baseball. And I know it broke his heart because he then joined Little League. And he was the town umpire in San Carlos, California, where I grew up. He was the head umpire. And I know it must have been tough on him when the other dad said, "Oh, what about your son? Why isn't he out here?" And when I graduated from high school, 1967, we had these block sweaters. And, man, I had buttons and pins and top honor student. And I was involved in everything. Except the only thing my dad saw was this pocket did not have a C for Carlmont High and no baseball. And I went to University of California, graduated summa cum laude. Dad's reaction, "You've always been a zero in sports." I did really well in my graduate studies at UCLA, completed my MBA, and Dad said, "You have never even tried out for a baseball team." And I wrote my first book, which was Phone Power. My dad worked for the phone company. I think I may have been trying to get his attention. I wrote inside the front cover, "Dad, you may never know how much of my career has been built on wanting you to be proud of me." And you know, my dad never read that book, and he never commented on what I wrote inside the cover. When I was 39, I had a speech in San Francisco where my dad lived, and I said, "Dad, I'd sure love to have you come be in the audience and see what I like to do." And his reaction was to say, "Hell, they charge $2 just to park your car at those fancy hotels." But my dad came. And at the end of my talk, my dad clapped. And my dad said, "Son, I'm proud of you." And I burst into tears. I said, "Dad, I've been knocking myself out for 39 years. I always got the top grades. I was involved in everything. How could it take you 39 years to be proud of me?" And my dad said, "Son, you must be nuts. Because since the day you were born, I've told everybody I've ever met how proud I am of you. Except me. Not once." And I'm so happy to tell you that that day marked the beginning of a wonderful relationship. I got to enjoy several good years with my dad. But it all started when he finally said he was proud of me. I'm a speaker today because my dad didn't clap for me as a kid. He didn't say, "That's what you're good at. Good for you, son." Power talkers do acknowledge others for what they're good at. I'm very happy to tell you that my dad left at the end of his life. The last week of his life, I'd say a good 30% of his word count was some variation of, "I'm so proud of you, son." But why wait? Why wait? Ladies and gentlemen, the 9th trait of power talkers is that they share their pride. You got associates in your office who do great work for you, who you probably told others you're proud of. Tell them! You got kids at home tonight who you're proud of? Don't tell your friends. Tell them. You work for a boss who's a wonderful leader? Don't tell people what a wonderful leader your boss is. Tell your boss. Power talkers don't talk about others in a prideful way. They tell them directly. The 9th trait of power talkers is that they share their pride. It has been a pleasure for me to be with you tonight. I'm very proud of my long association with Yes. I'm very proud to have been able to share with you the ideas that I know you'll be able to put to work. And I want to simply close tonight by saying, if you do nothing else, I want you to make sure that the people in your personal life tonight hear from you tonight how you feel about them. Make sure that the people you work with tomorrow know directly from you. Don't tell others how good they are. Tell them. Power talkers are people who project positive expectations. They give credit where it's due. They rebound resiliently. They accept responsibility. They build cooperation. They speak decisively. They remember the basics. And they share their pride. I wish you all tremendous success in every area of your life, not just professionally. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you.